Number 18 through 20, let me tell you how much fun you're going to have with these tables. Interpreting these tables is the most difficult thing in chapter 4 and chapter 5. Folks seem to have a difficult time wrapping their head around the fact that this 15 is in both a row and a column. This is a table of polygraph results. When anybody takes a polygraph result, the test either says positive, they're lying, or negative, they're not lying. Now, technically, there's a indecisive, but tossing that out, the test is either going to come back positive, the person's lying, or it's going to come back negative, the person's telling the truth. Now, aside from that is the matter of whether the person actually is lying or not. This 15 are in the column, he's telling the truth. But they're in the row, the test says what? He's lying. So these 15 were not lying, but the test said they were. That's a false positive. If you're not breaking the law, but some test says you are, then you're being wrongly accused. That's what false positive means. These 42, were those people lying or telling the truth? They're in the lied column, and what did the test say? They're in the positive row. So these 42 people were lying, and the test caught them. These 32, were they lying or telling the truth? They're in the did not lie column, so they're not lying. What did the test say? That they're not lying. So they weren't lying, and the test said they weren't lying. That's a true negative. These 9 folks, were they lying or telling the truth? They're in the lied column, but the test said what? Said they're not lying. So these 9 people, we call those false negatives. Negative means the test says they're telling the truth. Or let me say it better. Negative, the test says they're not lying. But false negative means they really were. All right. How many responses were actually lies? Nobody say it out loud. Think about it for just a second. How many of this total number of people were actually lying? All right, tell me what you think. It's not just the 42. These folks were lying and got caught. These folks were lying and didn't get caught, but all of this column were lying. So how many responses were actually lied? Everybody in the lie column. The 42 plus the 9, 51. Now, how many people even took polygraphs? Before we can find a probability, we have to know how many total people participated in this experiment. How would I find that? Yeah, just add them all up. That's 51 and 48 is 99. What did I say? Oh, that is 47. 47 and 51, so 98. People participated in this experiment. 51 of them were lying. So if you just put all 98 people in a bag, shook them up, and pulled one out, what's the probability that you'd get a liar, liar, pants on fire as a fraction? The number of people who were lying out of the total number of people. the probability of a lie was 51 out of 98 were lying. It's a little bit over half. Use the rounding method described to express the answer as a decimal. Just punch 0.51 divided by 98 on the calculator. Somebody give me 4 decimal places. What do you get? 0.5204. Does anybody second that? Okay. We want to round the answer to 3 significant digits. So to 3 significant digits, what would we enter in my math lab? Yeah. That was my next point. If the directions say 3 significant digits, then my math lab is wanting you to type in 3 numbers. It's wanting you to type in that 0, but I don't think it'll count it wrong. Certainly on a test, if you put 0.52 and then the test said the correct answer is 0.520 and you showed that to me, I would absolutely give you credit for it. I think my math lab will always take either one, but if it ever doesn't, please let me know. When you take the test Wednesday, I will give you a piece of paper with some things I want you to read before you start the test, especially since this is the first test you'll be taking. One of them is at the very bottom. I'm going to have, if there are any of these problems that you would like me to look at your work, if my math lab is telling you your answer is wrong, but you really don't see why and you want me to look at it, then write the number of the problem on this line. I don't ever mean to cheat you out of anything. If a problem's counted wrong, I'll either explain why your answer is wrong or I'll give you credit for it. So if you question one of the answers on the test, write that number down so I can look at it and either explain why that answer's right or change your grade. Number 20, if one of the responses is randomly selected, what's the probability that it's a false negative? Well, before we write it as a decimal, let's write it as a fraction. As a fraction, what's the probability of a false negative? There were 9 total false negatives out of 98 people participating in the experiment. And now somebody give me that round. Somebody give me 4 decimal places and then we'll round it. What did you get with 4 decimal places? So to 3 significant digits, what would you enter in my math lab? Yeah. That's almost a 10% chance, right? 10 out of 100 would be a 10% chance. Would you say that that's, I mean, I'm just asking for your gut opinion here. Would you say 10 out of 100 is unusual? Or let me use the word shocking. If something is going to happen 10 out of 100 times, would you consider it shocking? No. I mean, unusual, I would consider it unlikely, but not shocking. If something has a 10% chance of happening, I'm going to assume that it's going to happen 10% of the time, and I'm not going to be shocked when it does. What does that tell you about the polygraph test? That's why they're not admissible in court. Almost 10% of the time, it's going to let liars go free. Folks who got a negative result, but they actually were lying, that happens about 10% of the time. And even worse, people who were telling the truth get accused of lying almost 15% of the time. If this test is wrong, this is a good question. Let me add it. Let's call this another part down here, or just another question. What is the probability that the test result is wrong, one way or the other? How many people got the wrong results? These 9 who were actually lying, but the test said they weren't. Hang on just a second. We need to talk. These 15 actually were lying. These 15 were not lying, but the test said they were. So there were 24 people who got the incorrect results. What's the probability of the test being wrong? It's wrong about a fourth of the time. That's pretty significant. And that's why polygraphs are not admissible in court.